Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Student of the Game. I am Kyle Nash, the Student of the Game. And listen, if you're here, chances are you like talking about sport. We're glad you're doing it with us here tonight. An honor, joy, and privilege to have all of you aboard. I know you guys are thinking, yeah, you've been missing. Hey, listen, holiday weeks are tough, okay? It is what it is. Crema fell on a Wednesday. New Year's Day fell on a Wednesday, a day after which I had the second of two bowl games, which, by the way, you would have seen that coverage on the Fans First Sports Network. So, you know, the Cure Bowl, the Citrus Bowl, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, not necessarily in that order. But then, of course, also for Fans First as well, covering the Orlando Magic. They decided to fire Doug Peterson. That was a whole thing. UCF had Kansas and got whooped in men's basketball. Scott Frost be hiring people for, that stuff going on with the Night Shift podcast and the Black and Gold Banneret. Just been a little bit busy. But before I get too much into things, listen, and we're going to be talking about the NFL playoffs. This is how widespread the fires in California are affecting things. So, listen, just wanted to throw some thoughts and prayers and heartfelt well wishes for all that are affected in that area. I know every few years it seems like now we're getting some sort of fire disaster going on there, but nonetheless, shout out to all those that are dealing with that in that area. That is not a simple thing. With that being said, let me get into this. We should not be surprised that there isn't consensus on how to do the NFL MVP. None at all. What's the evidence? Looking at the college football playoff. There are so many people talking about the college football playoff out there, the committee themselves, those out there that think the ACC belonged in there the way it does, or the G5, if you want to say the two G5 schools made it, or any of that. But at the end of the day, the argument is generally just the same. People are either pounding the table for what a number looks like, or people are shouting, like me, to remind them what the purpose of the damn exercise is. For the college football playoff, the purpose of the exercise was to not reward weak teams so we could get better games later. We proved to be right there. Really the biggest exception, and with no disrespect to Notre Dame, by the way, at all, Georgia had their starting quarterback get hurt. They were in a position they were playing without their quarterback, and they were playing against a team competent enough to take advantage and take them down. Hey, there's a reason I picked Notre Dame to win the game. I just didn't have an opportunity to say it anywhere because I didn't have any shows. Fortunately, the Huddle Up Podcast, I think, accommodated my picking that. And of course, speaking of the Huddle Up Podcast, we and MVPs will have Mike the Bernier doing our NFL awards for the year, as has become a very awesome tradition, if I do say so. Meanwhile, people are worried about numbers in their assessment of the MVP and with no regard for the difficulty of the job in hand. Cowards out there will guaranteedly hand it guaranteedly. I don't know if that's a word, but it is now. Screw it. Will almost guaranteedly, I'm doubling down, go with a quarterback. We all know last year Christian McCaffrey was the actual MVP, but he didn't play quarterback, didn't get it. Lamar Demetrius Jackson, as a deserving candidate, won it. I would argue it. He deserved that one that year than some of the others where they stole it from Russell Carrington Wilson, 2017 and 2019, both, by the way. We can have that argument another time. I'm glad to hear it. You will lose. You will lose. This year, Saquon Barkley has been effectively eliminated, partially by his own coach limiting his play the last week, whatever, but with no regard for the fact that he's not a running back, or rather that he is a running back. He's not a quarterback. Everybody assumes it's Lamar Demetrius Jackson and Josh Allen. Here's the thing, and here's where I struggle most. If you take somebody off of one of those teams, what do? It's a difficult thing to assess. And I know you're not supposed to take games from the past or occurrences from the past into account, but it's an unfortunate truth that the Ravens have at least been serviceable at times without Lamar Demetrius Jackson on the field, and they've only upgraded the support in the backfield in the form of Derrick Henry. Meanwhile, if Josh Allen goes down, he's out. The Bills are done, son. That's a thing. That's not negotiable to me. And I get it. But Kyle, you're all about the difficulty of the schedule and all of that. And you know what? You're right. It gives Lamar Demetrius Jackson a huge advantage. And who knows? Maybe we'll be rectified should the Ravens beat the Steelers without Zay Flowers in the coming playoffs, which, by the way, look out for that tomorrow morning. Jeff Hardman and head of not only a Fans First Sports Network, but also the Steel Curtain Network, comes on and we preview that game tomorrow morning. So for those of you early risers and all that. By the way, I'm recording another thing with our good friend Seawall of Bowie TV about the Red Tails and the Bucks doing battle there too. You'll probably see that tomorrow as well. Huddle Up YouTube channel, Sertoba Media, and all the places you normally find this show. But the thing that shouldn't decide it, the team's records. The days of the best player on the best team winning it should be done. I'm not one of these weirdos that think Joe Burrow should win it, at least get, I don't know, a winning team perhaps. I would normally say competitive in week 17 or 18 for the playoffs, which technically the Bengals were, but I don't mean as a result of other people controlling your destiny. I mean, if you win, you're in, that kind of thing. I don't know. But just the fact that there's so much statistical what have you being put on it, it just drove me nuts in the same fashion that the college football playoff did. But at the end of the day, I think at least we'll be in a position this year to where two G5 players won't win or be competing for the MVP. Anyways, now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get the custom back underway. The thing you've known and loved when I bring this guy on, and for other things lately this year too, he's come up big. But hey, it's getting hot in here, thank God, because it's been freezing temperatures in Florida. It's time to feel the burn. Mikey the Burn Bernier. What's up, buddy? First of all, I'm not even going to let you say hi or anything because you come in here with your fancy titles, and in here you say, I said what I said. I'm going to see if you're attempting to do a Lucifer Morningstar, and if so, I'll allow it. But I want to make sure you properly allocated it. What is your statement here tonight, my friend?
My statement is, funny enough, we had the Huddle Up show last night. First show we've been able to do of the new year, where we are all, most of us were live and in living color. Of course, we had to deal with the surveillance fan, but whatever. But on that show, I made the joke to Jim. I said, I'm going to come on the show tonight, and I'm just going to troll Kyle for the first, 20 minutes and just pick all Bengals for all the awards just because they finished over 500 after we talked about them being one of the biggest disappointments the first half of the season. So I just preemptively I said what I said because there's going to be some things that I'm going to say out loud tonight, and people are going to be like, this guy's lost his ever-loving mind. But I'm going to have the stats to back it up like always, so we're just going to
here's the thing. Whenever you come in thinking something's going to be bad, you normally land the plane. It's when you think you're right that you get crazy. That's
not wrong.
Hey, listen, I look at it this way. At least on this show with the college football playoff, I don't have to worry about cursing because Oregon's eliminated. Take that, sock hawker. Anyways, right in the face. So with that in mind, the single tier for Mikey Byrne. I think this is one of the Huddle Up sound bites that doesn't break any of the rules here on the Student of the Game. So I'll just voice act it in me referencing Oregon. That's just so goddamn rude. I know you were thinking it. It's okay.
Oh no. See, the thing is I doubled down at the beginning of the season.
You really did. You bought the shirt.
I went all in with the Oregon Ducks. And here's the thing, and we talked about it on last night's show. When we were discussing the games, I think you'll appreciate this. It's a clip over on the TikTok page. Jim asked,
Huddle Up YouTube channel, by the way.
Yeah, Jim hit me with the what did I learn, and I said on these shows we've said there are three things in life that are certain: death, taxes, and the over. I found the fourth thing. It's death, taxes, the over, and Cam Scatabo.
There's nothing wrong with Scatabo. I won't front on that.
That guy was a tank in that game.
Here's the thing. The fifth one is Dylan Gabriel choking. By the way, former UCF quarterbacks involved here. Parker Navarro, 2 bowl wins. Dylan Gabriel, 1. Anyways.
I was going to say that's probably number 6 because number 5 is Ernest jinxing anything that he talks about because we talked about that on the show too.
Fair enough, but he has very little to do with the Big 12. That being said, let's get into it, man. You know what? I think let me what music? You know, we mentioned Ernest Christian. Let's use this music as we break down our awards for the week here. I'll go in with this. There we go. We turn up the music here a little bit. This is why I'm not a good producer. There we go. All right, Ern. We've done MVP first. There's going to be some conversation there. I'm going to set that aside. I'm trying to find an obvious answer on here. I think the only really obvious one this season is Defensive Rookie of the Year. I want to say you to say your answer on 1, 2, 3. Jared Verse. Next. Go ahead. Mention why you picked him, though.
I think this was the easiest one. He's basically taken over a defense that needed a piece to fill in for the now departed Aaron Charles Donald. And he stepped in. I know he doesn't play D tackle, but he has stepped into that role and become a face of that defense. Has been a big what's the word I'm looking for? A big destructor of quarterbacks' time in the pocket. His pressures have been at the upper half of definitely of the NFC. So yeah, Jared Verse I felt like was the easiest pick here. He was really the only standout rookie that I really looked at most of the year.
Yeah, and I'll say this: when it comes to I'll put it this way: you've seen Moneyball, right? Everybody who follows sports should have seen Moneyball. If not, I'm gonna plead the Captain America defense. You need to put it on the list. The reason why I liken this to Moneyball is they replaced Aaron Donald in the aggregate. They got in a lot of good rookies. Their rookie safety's pretty good. They got a lot of young guys to step in. They got a rookie linebacker, a lot of dudes to go in. Jared Verse, over and above, was the guy as part of that group in the new aggregate. One does not simply replace Aaron Charles Donald. That's not a thing that happens, okay? The actual Super Bowl MVP. My cup runneth over with the amount of times I mentioned that. Did you catch that one? My cup runneth over. You like that? But yeah, Jared Verse is definitely the key. It's not like they're the best defense in the NFL, but compared to what we expected and what we expected out of the Rams overall, especially once the injuries started happening on the offensive side, to see them win the division is an accomplishment. Jared Verse, a big part of it. Next, let's jump over to Offensive Rookie of the Year. This one's going to be odd. I'm probably going to be called a homer for picking who I picked, but I will have good defense for it. I'm going to start with you, Mikey Byrne. Who you got?
See, I went back and forth on this one because I felt
it's not easy.
I felt like you have to give credit to Brian Thomas Jr. for the season he put out there. You have to give credit to Malik Neighbors for doing what he did with the 2 quarterbacks that he had throwing him the football. And I mean, I think, you know, and me and you see eye to eye on records shouldn't have anything to do with this, but records have things to do with these awards. It's the way that the media.
They should break ties. I agree with that.
So Bo Nix is someone that you probably have to have at least a small conversation for getting that team back to the playoffs. Thanks a lot, Carson Wentz. Looking at you. That being said, though, I'm going to stick with the guy that I had as the first half offensive rookie of the year, which was Jaden Daniels. I don't think that Commanders team is anywhere close to a playoff team without him. I think what he was able to do is a big step forward for him. Obviously, I think I know where you're going, and I have no problem with that being the pick because I think it was the two of them, and then it was everybody else. So I don't have an issue with it being with who I believe you're going to pick.
I had Bo Nix because of the difficulty of the division. I had Jaden Daniels because he helped substantiate my power vacuum NFC East theory, even though the Eagles kind of did better than I thought they would. Credit to them. But another factor took me in a completely different direction. And I will admit, my coverage for Fans First Sports Network may have biased me a little bit, but it gave me information I needed to be smarter. And that is for me to pick Brian Thomas Jr. as the Rookie of the Year. Now, here's the thing. Part of the reason I'm doing it, I'm punishing the press and the fans for not putting him in the Pro Bowl. What in the entire hell are we doing here? Now, granted, he'll probably still get in because Zay Flowers is in the playoffs and is missing a playoff game, being injured. He'll likely, I'm still hurt, and do all that, and BTJ will sneak in, as guys have done in the past. This is how we got Mitch Trubisky as a rookie in the Pro Bowl. These things happen, okay? Now, 87 catches, 1,282 yards and 10 touchdowns. I get it. It's 500 less than Jamar Chase, says you, the Bengals fan. But here's the thing. 7 of those games were from McCorkle Jones at quarterback. One of the games was the lowest scoring game in the NFL. You are dealing with an offensive line that is a sieve. You are dealing with a defense that can't stop the run and thus gives, by extension, fewer reps to Brian Thomas Jr. But Kyle, Malik Neighbors had a similar situation. The defenses that Malik Neighbors played on a regular basis were a lot worse, except for maybe the Eagles, obviously. I'm not here to say that the AFC South is a world-beating division. Let me lead there. But yeah, let's put it this way. Look at that schedule that the Jags played, including one Sauce Gardner somewhere in there, right? Playing the Jets is one of the air quotes weaker games. Man, listen, BTJ is so overlooked, and I'm telling you, pay attention now. The only thing that can murder his career is expectations, because they are the thief of all joy. No offense, Bengals fan, but I'm sure you know what that means. And, maybe Texans fans are more appropriate in having that conversation right now. I know they made the playoffs, but damn. So, yeah, I got BTJ Offensive Rookie of the Year. But, again, not mad at any of the quarterbacks that we mentioned being picked. Malik Neighbors, I have questions, but I'm not angry. But, yeah, there we go. This should be fun, and I think I know what you're going to say before you said it. Offensive Player of the Year, Mikey the Burn Bernier, go.
Yeah, I think you know where I'm going with this one. Only the 5th receiver in NFL history to win the Triple Crown. I get it. He also played for a team that underperformed, and I will be the first one who will call out my own Cincinnati Bengals for underperforming all year.
You said what you said after all.
Yes, correct. and I getting into a verbal back and forth with Matt and in the Huddle Up thread on Facebook. I'm very adamant and vocal. When my team does something, I will be the first one to say they underperformed, call them out for their bullshit, etc. Oop, I shouldn't have said that word.
Let it go. It's BS.
So I'll leave it with this. Jamar Chase has a meme going around that he is the first receiver in NFL history. Hold on, I actually brought it up. I think I still have it.
In 30 years, according to Daniel Orlovsky, right?
Yeah. But I also had he's the first receiver in Week 14 to have 14 catches, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's the first wide receiver since Jamar Chase in Week 10 of this year, who was the first receiver since Jamar Chase since Week 2 of this year to pull that off. When you have memes being floated around about the season that you have, and I get it, the Bengals were down a lot in a lot of games and forced to throw. But this is something that I've said on your show. I've said it on other shows about the Cincinnati Bengals. There was always the talks of Justin Jefferson is miles ahead of Jamar Chase. I think this year was Jamar Chase finally looking up and going, I'm just as good, if not better than Jetta's. And I think he finally took that alpha approach of, I'm the number one wide receiver on this team. I keep hearing T. Higgins is just as good as I am, and Cincinnati's going to have to make, that was stuff that was floating around on Twitter for a while that because Jamar was getting.
I'm glad I never saw it. Oh my God. I didn't know that was the thing. I don't mean to interrupt you. You literally surprised me that much. I'm like, this is real. Yeah. That's what, wow.
That there was, sorry, there, it wasn't, okay. Let's be very transparent. It wasn't a lot of real Bengals media members and or fans. It was people trying probably to fit a narrative of stroking the T. Higgins ego because they know he's probably not staying in Cincinnati. There is a chance that he stays.
Like people trying to compare Daniel Jones to Trevor Lawrence, but they aren't doing that to C.J. Stroud. I wonder why. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry, Mikey, but I was just observing the national media at work again.
Yeah, that's wild. But Jamar finishes with 127 catches for 1,708 yards. He finished with 17 touchdowns. I will tell you this much. If Nick Sirianni doesn't bench Saquon Barkley for week 18 and he breaks the record, he probably beats Jamar Chase, and I have no problem admitting that, and I have no problem letting that be known that Saquon Barkley probably gets my vote then at that point. But in some must-win games, in some must-win situations, Jamar Chase had the biggest games of his season. So I give my offensive player of the year to Jamar Chase.
I'm not mad at that. Matter of fact, I had it written down at one point. But then you know what I did? I'm looking at, because what I like to do when I'm propping receivers is account for what percentage of the offense that they are. And when I see that one Joseph Burr has damn near 5,000 yards, how do you not pick Joey Burr? You're the shittiest homer I've ever seen. See, now we're even. So,
because there was real talks that he was going to be my MVP for a while.
Well, see, I mean, you would have gotten away with it on this show, but like, man, don't do that.
No. See, and maybe this is me. I am someone who, and maybe this is because of what the media has done. I've looked at the MVP as almost the quarterback of the year award and the offensive player of the year as the best of the wide receiver, running back, skill position guys.
Best of the rest, yeah.
Correct. Exactly. I try to give that love to the skill players in that regard because everybody's going to say the MVP is insert quarterback name here.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I believe it was 2014, 2012, something like that. I put J.J. Watt as MVP with Andrew Luck as offensive player of the year because he had more touchdowns as a defensive player than the entirety of the Kansas City Chiefs receiving core, wide receiver core combined, right? Andrew Sherman was their tight end at the time. They did not have Travis Kelce in full effect in the same way then. And he had more touchdowns than the rest of the wide receiver core. Not saying a lot because it was 0 touchdowns they had that season, but it's a thing that happened. And also, listen, you see my fat head behind me here on the studio, of J.J. Watt there. I'm making sure I'm touching his number so people don't think I'm doing anything inappropriate. But, I say all that to say the better example is Christian McCaffrey, as I led with. And, yeah, it's ridiculous. Being said, Jamar Chase at wide receiver at offensive play of the year. Like, listen, I have a scratch right there where I was starting to write it. Do you see it? It says Chase underneath the scribbles. That's the thing that happened. I hope you didn't see any of my other answers. Well, we haven't. Okay, the other ones you saw, we haven't really done yet. Defensive player of the year, Mikey Byrne.
All right, so this one I went back and forth on.
It's easy too. It's a tough one this year.
It is because I know we talked at the middle of the season, and we said it was T.J. Watt. It was T.J. Watt.
And it wasn't close then.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It was T.J. Watt in a landslide, and then T.J. Watt got a little dinged up. He missed a couple games, especially that game against Baltimore, where Baltimore actually was able to run the ball, and Lamar was able to do something he hadn't really been able to do, which is be effective throwing the ball against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is what happens when T.J. Watt isn't running him over left and right.
Funny how that works, doesn't it?
Yeah, we talked about
what you said, Mikey Byrne.
We talked about that. And then again, Trey Hendrickson, for as bad as the Bengals defense has been all year, finishes leading the league in sacks.
Because of his number, yeah, you have to talk about it. I agree.
Correct. You got to have him in the conversation, but that's where that conversation ends because that defense was bad and too bad at the beginning of the year. If that defense was any better at the beginning half of the year, they're a playoff team. Joe's probably in the MVP ballot, and Trey's probably a real life contender for defensive player of the year. But unfortunately, this is where we're at. So we're out on Trey Hendrickson. I went back and forth on Kirby Joseph, the cornerback for the Detroit Lions, 9 interceptions for a defense that a lot of people, including some people over on the Huddle Up, wrote off for dead the minute that Aiden Hutchinson was announced as being out for an extended period of time.
After all, they needed that get right game to win 15, right, Mikey Burr?
Had to get right. They just had to get right. Great job, Ernest. We love it. So I went, like I said, I went back and forth. I've sat on it for a couple days.
That's what
that is what she said. and I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to go completely off the script here. I'm going to go someone that a couple weeks ago I don't know that I would have until I actually sat down, watched him play a football game, went back and looked at his stats, and he's from the Denver Broncos.
Interesting.
I'm going to take Nick Bonito.
Tell me why. Give me the rundown there.
Nick Bonito finished third in sacks with 13.5 from the linebacker position. He had 4 pass deflections, an interception, which he returned for a touchdown, 2 forced fumbles. He had 48 tackles, and a lot of them were on the solo side of the football. Right. He's a guy who in coverage was able to keep tight ends and running backs kind of contained, which is something that a lot of defenses really haven't been able to really do a lot this season.
Yeah, that's legit.
And I think it's one of those things where he was the heart and soul of that Denver defense, which for a while was the reason why they actually were and are a playoff team, was they were winning games 17-10. They were letting Bo Nix go out there and 3 and out.
It's a similarity to that Broncos defense that had Tim Tebow winning games.
Correct.
I'm giving Bo Nix more credit than that, obviously.
Yes, I would as well, but that defense definitely kept them in some games where Bo could go down there at the beginning of the fourth and have a drive and get them back into field goal range, take a late lead, and then the defense would hold. So I'm going to go with Bonito. Honestly, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, they were all in the conversation, as was Kirby Joseph, but I just felt that I had to give props to the guy who basically helped carry a defense into the playoffs.
Well, and I will admit, part of my problem with my pick, which, by the way, your pick is very well thought out. You have a lot of good stats. And I like to look for that defender that can play that, what I call the Liam Neeson from Taken defense. I will find you and I will kill you. Okay. And doing it all over the place like that. And the guys that have the most advantage to do that are linebackers and safeties from a stat perspective. But there's 2 other positions that get looked at that you can't pick based on stats. One of them is corner, and I like that you mentioned Kirby Joseph. There was a time when you and I think, talked about Sauce Gardner if we didn't outright pick him perhaps for midseason one time. Another example of somebody you can't do based on stats. But I know why you didn't pick this guy. And the thing it is that it has nothing to do about anything on defense that you did not pick this man. It is your latent, seething hatred and bias for the Kansas City Chiefs that you did not pick the actual MVP of the Kansas City Chiefs in Chris Jones. I am hurt, I am wounded, and disgusted by you, Mike Bernier, that you didn't even mention the Humpy Bumpy's name. What do you have to say for yourself?
I came to the conclusion that Chris Jones was going to end up being talked about when we got to the MVP portion of the vote. So I didn't really go with him here. That's nothing against Chris Jones, because me and you have both on this show, on Huddle Up,
and others,
and other shows have mentioned that, it's Chris Jones, and he's the heart and soul of that team. And that a lot of team people are like, but Mike, but Kyle, they're 15-1 and they've done it with no wide receivers. Yes, because of Chris Jones. It's not because of the offense. I mean, you can sit here and tell me, oh, they're 15-1 and Patrick Mahomes is having his worst statistical career, so that means he should be the MVP. Or bold strategy here, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off. The defense is the best defense that he's had as a pro. And they're allowed and able to keep him in games that they really probably wouldn't have been in over the last 3 or 4 years with the turnovers and the problems that they've had on the offensive side of the football. At the end of the day, when you look at what they're doing, they've won more games 17-10, 19-17, things like that, where Mahomes has not looked great. And look at the one game they lost, they kind of got the doors blown off of them because Patrick Mahomes started turning the ball over.
Yeah. Well, Mickey Delaney was worried about you for a minute when I was dressing you down there. Get out now, he said. No, but everything you say there is correct. And you would, if I were better prepared to have to explain myself to you on this than I was, I would have told you the points per game for the Chiefs this year is at a ridiculous low. You mentioned Patrick LeVon Mahomes II, who still deserves 3-name treatment regardless, having his worst statistical year. That means somebody else picked it up. Travis Michael Kelce, less a factor because age is catching up to him. I am convinced he retires this year, whether they three-peat or not. But what he's done, this is a Tom Brady style performance. Okay, he'll go in, he'll get all the credit, even though it was Vince Wilfork, Richard Seymour, Mike Vrabel, and others that I'm currently blanking on. Ty Warren, Lawyer Malloy, Rodney Harrison,
Ty
Law at one point, right? Asante Samuel, depending on what era we're talking about there. Troy Brown playing receiver and corner, for Christ's sake. What are we doing here? So this is one of those years where the defense is carrying it. The difference is Tom Brady, when they were offensively strong, lost the Super Bowl. But nobody wants to talk about that. Well, except for Ernest Christian, if he were actually a Giants fan. Anyways, so with that being said, let's go ahead and go over to biggest surprise. What was your biggest surprise, Mikey Byrne?
I mean, we talked about him. I mentioned the fact that Nick Bonito is my defensive player of the year. It is going to be that the Denver Broncos are a playoff team.
Yeah, that's fair.
Kudos to Sean Payton. I think that this is one of those moments where we've talked about Sean Payton for a while with, he was the beneficiary of having Drew Brees. Well, it didn't hurt. Let's put it that way.
Of course.
But he's also a really good head coach, and he's a really good mind. And you could tell that the situation they were in last year with Rusty, and it wasn't going to work because of the way that Sean Payton wanted to run this football organization.
And also with what Nathaniel Hackett had left there, let's be clear.
Correct. So you take those two things. Last year was a little bit of a bumpy road. They made the decision to move on from Rusty. They draft what they think is their franchise quarterback. Had a great year out of him. The defense has played out of their mind. I mean, I went back and forth between them. I had the Commanders on there. Obviously, I had Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold kind of shot himself in the foot with that performance on Sunday night in a game to win the division. That's kind of what pulled me off of the biggest surprise, because that was the reminder that Sam Darnold still has those 18 for 41 for 165 yards in his bag somewhere. Okay. So it's one of those things where Sam Darnold, it's not that I'm surprised by Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has been great this year, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Sam, but he still has those bumps in the road, and those bumps can be really bad. And that's kind of where I was like, this is the reminder that Sam Darnold is still Sam Darnold. He's just been playing out of his mind. So I ended up going with Denver, what they were able to do, what they were able to get into the playoffs. I just felt like it was a good surprise, because that team, in all intents and purposes, was supposed to be fighting for the cellar with the Raiders in the preseason.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. And by the way, I know someone who would agree with you. It would be my good friend Colm Cronin from the Irish NFL show, who is himself a Broncos fan. Like, he is so much so. I witnessed this man, who is an excellent NFL entity in mind, completely like go cold and like freak out like a little schoolgirl when he met Patrick Surtain. Okay. because I helped him do it at the Super Bowl. But it's not so much your props for the Broncos that I have a problem with in your assessment, because it's a good pick. I thought about it. What I hate is your criticism of a 14-win team. You almost made me do it again. Are you kidding me, Mikey Bird? You're going to do all this and take a giant diarrhea dump on the Vikings? You and I, speaking of the Raiders, we knew they were going to be bad all year. We had the Vikings in that level once J.J. McCarthy got hurt, and we didn't like that pick in the first place. The fact that they won 14 goddamn games means something. You know who didn't win 14 games? The Broncos.
The Cincinnati Bengals?
And the Cincinnati Bengals, fair. In a division that, as a division, is the most improved division in the goddamn NFL, they're going on the road to LA and dodging fire because they have 14 wins. Man, listen, if you weren't surprised by that, I don't know what kind of kinky stuff you and your wife are into after hours. That's all I'm saying. No, obviously, I don't dislike the Broncos pick. Like I said, I considered it. Far be it from me to nix Bo in these conversations. I see I did it again. But man, I couldn't get past the Vikings. I had them vying for the first pick, and they're the highest team traveling. Man, maybe it's because I cornered myself. I acknowledge that when that happens, this is another one just like Chris Jones. But man, listen, I can't not pick them, says the double negative. Anyways, biggest disappointment, Mikey Byrne.
This one I also went back and forth on. At the beginning of the midseason awards, I had the Bengals in that conversation. And you know, they I feel like they turned the ship around and finished strong enough to get themselves out of the biggest disappointment. Am I disappointed? Absolutely. Am I not happy with how it went? Absolutely. But you finished over 500.
The fact that they fought for the playoffs, I think, rescued them.
Correct. Finished over 500. Yeah. You know, finished as strong as they did. Gave themselves at least an opportunity to have a shot. I'm upset about it, but I think
that's more than you're used to getting in Bengals history in a lot of places. Am I right?
Correct. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. A lot of teams I felt underperformed. Looking at you, A.A. Ron, Charlie Rodgers, and the New York
but we saw that
Jets.
coming. If you're smart, that doesn't. No, I don't know,
Correct.
Man.
But my formal pick, it's on-field play, but it's also what's going on off the field. When you have Pat McAfee, a guy who, for all intents and purposes, is a good soul.
I like Pat McAfee.
Very, very energetic, loves to bring attention to the game of football, to communities.
I met that dude in person. I said, congratulations on FanDuel, and he looked me right in the face and said thank you in a way that dude meant it, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Pat, I feel that Pat's one of those guys that's actually a good one. So
he's at least authentic.
Correct. And you know what? I think that's all we can ask for from people is just to be themselves and to be authentic. And I think when you watch College Game Day, you watch Monday Night Raw, you see a guy who's having the time of his life in Pat McAfee.
Ironic. We're talking about that's authentic, and he does Monday Night Raw. I never thought of it that way before. Go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
So my biggest surprise, I guess, is the disappointment that I have in the Anthony Richardson Indianapolis Colts situation.
Now, hold on. And I'm going to stop you here because there's no way I'm going to pick the Colts, and it's because I'm going to go full Lucifer Morningstar. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. I told you that Anthony Richardson would hit injury issues. I told you it would be a factor, and they would throw in the immortal as soon as they could. See, I call him the immortal because he's falsely picked for being the comeback player of the year. Of course, I refer to Joe Flacco. So there was no way I was going Colts, even though I happen to be wearing blue and white tonight. But go ahead.
I mean, I think the reason why I ended up going with the Colts at the end of it, because I think for a while I wasn't going to go that way either. But the last couple weeks of the regular season with McAfee's tweet that ended up with them basically having multiple members of their team who have a podcast go on there and call Pat out and try to talk him down and things along those lines, to the point where Pat goes, you know what, fine, then I'm not renewing my box. I'm not renewing my season tickets for next year. I'm out.
Damn.
And if there's a guy who bleeds Indianapolis Colts blue, it's Pat McAfee.
You're not wrong, kid.
for them to push that guy out the door, and by them I mean the players, because I don't think it was Jim Irsay. I think Jim Irsay and the GM there were just like, Pat makes some points that, we got to be a little bit more strict on letting guys just do whatever they want and taking accountability for things. And, that's the thing. At the end of the day, Pat's a fan. Pat's a member of the media. You got to be okay with taking criticism. Hey, if you're going to let guys walk into practice 20 minutes late and not have accountability for it and not, sit here and, I know Pat called out the Anthony Richardson tapping himself out of a couple games on third down. And,
well, everybody did, not just Pat, but yeah.
So those are things. I don't know if it's a coach problem. I don't know if it's a GM problem, or if Jim Irsay is just too busy doing 35 other things. But for an NFL organization, in an organization that has the potential with the players that they have there, Michael Pittman Jr., JT, they have pieces there that can be really good. Their defense played really good at points in this season. They should be contending for a playoff spot, especially when the Houston Texans did not play as well as a lot of people expect them to play this year.
Yeah.
And it just kind of felt like it got phoned in by that organization at points. And that's a problem, because you're going to have a problem in free agency of guys not wanting to go there if you're not going to have some kind of structure that's going to keep people in check. And that's a problem.
Facts of the case. No, I get you. Not a bad pick. My disappointment, I was this close to putting the Atlanta Falcons. In that division, they should have won 11 games. They did not. And they found a way to let the Bucs pass them even after beating them twice in the season with the damn tiebreak. Didn't go there. Call me a homer if you want. The 49ers season where they were cooked early on and it was clear. Maybe it's not their own fart. Maybe it's not their own fault.
It is their own fart.
Frankly, you're right. Am I holding them too much accountable for league MVP Trent Williams being hurt? Yes, I am. Maybe they were missing Christian McCaffrey. The reason they're disappointing is beyond their control. But I have to put the 49. The more I talk about it, I probably should have said the Falcons, I suppose, now that I say it, because they did it to themselves too by not picking Michael Penix, who, by the way, battled out with a Panther team that scored 5 touchdowns. I know you're known for bad defense, Falcons, but damn, what are we doing here? So yeah, you know what? Put me down for the Falcons. Screw it. That's where I am.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate them not starting MPJ to start the season, but there was a point in this season where Coopins hit the wall and he hit it hard.
We're having that conversation's the problem, though, Burn. You know this. The fact they spent all that money and we're still talking about the Penix not penetrating a backfield sooner. See what I did there? Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
Is mightier.
So you get it. We did rookies. We did surprise. Comeback player of the year, Mikey Byrne.
Oh boy, yeah, this one. Just
make the homer pick. We know who you're picking.
Checkmate, you win.
Yeah, and Burrow's a fine pick. The only reason why I don't pick him, and I'm kind of speeding this one up if you don't mind. The reason why I don't pick him is we know what Joey Burrow is when he's on the field and when the Bengals are when he's off. This is not surprising to me. The answer is Sam Darnold. And I know. Oh, he won only 14 games. Screw him. And I get it. That last game did leave a bit of a bad taste in their mouth. I think that's more of a coaching problem, with no disrespect to Kevin O'Connell. But I thought that was more of a coaching problem than him. You tried to play the Lions game, and that's just a bad plan when you're a team that's more finesse than the Lions are. Which, by the way, I'm more finesse than the Lions are at age 45, okay? Let's be clear. I have Sam Darnold, of course. I mentioned them being the big surprise without Vikings being the biggest surprise without Sam Darnold. They can't do that, period, point blank, end of story. So I'll leave that at that. MVP, Mikey Byrne.
Oh, boy. So I went back and forth on this one.
Of course you did. Everybody is.
But I will tell you, I did not homer this up. I did not take Joe Burrow. Unfortunately, the struggles at the beginning of the year is what caused them to not be a playoff team. The loss to New England, the loss to Kansas City, the 2 losses to Baltimore by 3 or by 4 total points. Those are situations. You win 1 or 2 of those games, you're definitely a playoff team. You're in conversation of
Yep,
you're in the conversation of potentially winning that division if you beat Baltimore in both of those games. But unfortunately, here we are. That being said, I'm not going to take the record. I will not take a team award and be the reason why I'm giving somebody an award. So I will not
take a team stat for an individual award. I'm with you.
Correct. So I will not be taking Josh Allen as my MVP. I will keep my most valuable player award residing in Charm City. I am going to give it to Lamar Demetrius Jackson. As much as it pains me to say this because he is a division rival.
Yes, we see the striped bee in the background if you're watching the video.
But we talked about it on last night's Huddle Up show when they were like, "Who's your biggest rival? Who do you hate the most?" And I said it's Pittsburgh in a landslide. I respect Baltimore enough.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Grew up in Baltimore, in the Baltimore area. I'm originally from the DC area, so I know a lot about the Ravens organization. It's a respect thing. Do I like losing to them? No. Do I like playing them? Absolutely not. But at the end of it, I have no problem with them walking into the middle of the field, dapping up Lamar, telling him to stay healthy, see you next time, good luck the rest of the way, et cetera, et cetera. Joey Porter, if I see him in the streets, I hope that Vontaze Burfict punches him in the face, but that's neither here nor there.
If it's Vontaze Burfict, it'll probably be much worse, but we don't need to talk about that, let's just say, ethically questionable player right now.
No, but I will always have just a disdain for Joey Porter for that playoff game where he walked out on the field as a defensive coach that he's not allowed to be on the field and somehow got a Bengal player to get a 15-yard penalty. Wild. So that being said,
that's a whole thing. Anyway,
that's a whole thing. So I will give it to Lamar Jackson. Statistically, probably not his best statistical overall year, but what he's done as a quarterback with his 41 passing touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. He threw for 4,172 yards, and that's not accounting his contributes what he does on the ground. The Derrick Henry acquisition made him not have to run the ball as much to be basically a RB1 for that team. Because of J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards both leaving and going into Los Angeles.
It's not like they were on the field when they were there because they were hurt so much, so screw it.
Correct. Shout out to J.K. Dobbins, though, because he was in the conversation that I had for Comeback Player of the Year.
Absolutely.
He did have a really good year in L.A., so shout out to J.K. Dobbins.
Good call, yeah.
But when you acquire somebody like Derrick Henry and you can take the stress off of the legs of Lamar, you allow him to stand in that pocket, you allow him to be more of a playmaker with the arm. You allow him to keep plays alive, scrambling, moving the pocket, things along those lines. My MVP for the 2024 season is Lamar Demetrius Jackson.
I'm not mad at that, obviously, because he, Saquon, and Josh Allen all had a hell of a case. I'm not knocking that. I was this close to putting Saquon because he, like Lamar Demetrius Jackson, affects more than one part of the game and nurses a quarterback that's young and mistake-prone at times in the wrong situation. Not the Super Bowl. He had his best damn game of his career in that humpy bumpy. I was this close to making him a losing MVP, and then Patrick Mahomes II had a big run with a bad ankle. I'm sorry. Stats, screw stats. He did that. But I am compelled at this point to pick Josh Allen. Why? Because he was more efficient than he's ever been as a player. He stopped being a turnover machine to the same extent. Was he running effectively? Yes. And people forget that he runs effectively because Lamar Demetrius Jackson exists. It's a thing that happens. And to see the Bills, I get it. They had an easier schedule. Somebody who's a Notre Dame fan beat me over the head with this defense, and I'm using it now for Josh Allen, beat the hell out of the teams they were supposed to put on their schedule and are weak. They crushed them. I watched it happen personally on Monday night. Okay, well, I wasn't in Buffalo, but I did cover it for the Fans First Sports Network and watched him completely myrtleize, crush, and re-murder Tua as well. Now, granted, he didn't murder Tua himself, but that was a lopsided win. I get it. He lost to the Patriots last week. These things happen, okay? You know all about divisional physics, okay? You managed to beat the Steelers as a Bengals fan. A game you probably shouldn't have won. I blame George Pickens. You thank George Pickens. It is what it is. But as it all finishes out, see, you give me that you're not wrong face, and I know what it looks like. But yeah, for me, it had to have been Josh Allen, especially, and I think part of it is my own fault for setting the expectations as low for him as I did. Yes, I said the Bills would sneak into the playoffs. I did not think Josh Allen would look this good doing it. And credit to him as well. The extra icing on the cake is supplanting Patrick Lohan Mahomes II and being the first guy to do it. Although technically it was your Broncos. That's worth mentioning as well. So the last one, the hardest one, Coach of the Year, Mikey the Burn Bernier. Who you got?
Yeah, I think you saved the absolute hardest one for last.
I absolutely bleeping did, yes.
Because I really think there's like 7 guys that could win this award.
Easily.
And I don't think that I would be mad if any of them won the award.
Right. The answer is Doug Peterson. Just kidding.
He found a way to coach himself right out of a job. Shout out to Doug.
Hey, listen, getting away from Trent Baalke, that is
that's a win in itself. I will always be the biggest supporter for the NFC #1 seed coach, Mr. Dan Campbell.
Campbell.
I love me some Man Campbell. But and what they were able to do with that defense, I feel like if you don't have him in your very brief list, you have a problem. But he is not my formal selection. My formal selection, I'm gonna go to LA.
We love it.
Who's got it better than us?
Nobody.
Yeah, give me Harbaugh. What he was able to do with that team, we talked on Huddle Up before the season started. We couldn't name a wide receiver on that roster.
You didn't know about Jerry Judy's the wrong team.
Correct.
Quentin Johnston?
I knew about him from fantasy, but I also knew that he couldn't catch a cold.
That's fair.
His rookie year, I think he led the league in drops. Nobody knew about Ladd McConkey. Nobody knew about Will Dissly. We've had
because McConkey wasn't there yet. Yeah, exactly.
But I'm saying we had the conversation about the injury-prone running backs that they brought in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. We were like, what are they going to do to fill this roster? Like, the defense should be good. Bosa, Mack, Surtain, Asante Samuel Jr. Like, that team should be really good. And on the defensive side of the ball. And then you're like, Justin Herbert will sling it 54 times a game. And then they found a way to get production out of guys that are not household names. And I have to put it on the coach. He understood that he doesn't have the Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have the Jamar Chase. He doesn't have the A1 alpha wide receiver. So he drew up plays that were going to get guys open in space and then let them make plays after they had the football. And shout out to him. Shout out to the Chargers getting to the playoffs. I think they're going to be dangerous in the playoffs because of the quick strike offense that they have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Harbaugh. But if you told me it was any of the other 7 guys that I can list off the top of my head right now, I would be like, you ain't wrong.
No, and listen, I think the thing about Harbaugh that makes that work over and above being a structure rebuild and dealing with Spanos and all that situation that already exists there with the Los Angeles Chargers, I'm also compelled to say the way you can make a lot of production happen out of air quotes lesser assets is by winning in the trenches first. Even in his youth, right? Dakota Rain Prescott was a far better and more easy quarterback to watch because he was protected regularly. DeMarco Murray looked like a star when he never really should have been one. There was a lot of things that happened when you had a good offensive line. Not to say the Chargers had a bad one, but seeing a guy being able to leverage that to use committee-style running to keep guys healthy and not overrun them. Apparently, somebody learned something from the Fred Taylor, Maurice Jones-Drew scenario. Granted, both of those are Pro Bowl I'm not going to say that Mojo's a Hall of Famer, but like he should be in the conversation of being a well-known guy. And Fred Taylor is a Hall of Famer. The Hall of Fame committee just has not figured it out yet. But yeah, I bailed myself. What about it? That's why all that worked. Did not pick Jim Harbaugh. I'm not mad at anyone that picks Jim Harbaugh. I almost picked Jim Harbaugh. But pardon my bias in watching a man get a game ball after beating the mess that he made. Watch somebody else come in, take the biggest cap hit in NFL history, basically abuse off the clock his quarterback, come back the next year with a guy that got beat twice in college by Atlanta's backup, and have basically one receiver that you've heard of and a cornerback. And then suddenly you're able to announce one of their linebackers as Defensive Player of the Year, and they made the playoffs. We have 3 AFC West playoff teams because Sean Payton did what he promised he would do. A lot of people weren't on the Bo Nix bandwagon. I thought he would do good. Did not think he would do this good. I have Sean Payton. I can't get around that. I would have also accepted Andy Reid. I would have also accepted Mike Tomlin. Obviously, John Harbaugh in the conversation, just among the other few. You mentioned Man Campbell as well. Give me Kevin O'Connell if you wanted.
He was on my short list.
Sure.
I mean, my short list was Harbaugh, Campbell, Payton, O'Connell, fringe Dan Quinn for what he was able to do in DC, but that was more of like he's in like the 5, 6, 7 range. But like,
if they beat the Eagles twice, we'd be talking.
Correct.
Yeah, but this is how close it was. So. Anyways, that'll do it for this year's Coach of the Year awards. Mike, I told you we would do Black Monday in picks. We ran long. Screw it. I got to talk to Candy Waller about this playoff game coming up. So, Mike, tell the world where you can be found.
You can follow me on Twitter at They Call Me Burn. You can listen to me talk professional wrestling on the Take 3 Wrestling podcast with myself, Big Jim, and our good friend Joe. That is on our Twitch page, twitch.tv/Take 3 Wrestling. You can also listen to me on Huddle Up with this guy. That guy.
You got to do it backwards, remember?
That guy.
You,
you can listen to us talk about football. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're getting down the final stretch there. But otherwise, that's it. That's all I got.
Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And as the student of the game on Facebook, the SOTG on the others. Of course, my work with the Fans First Sports Network, writing the Orlando Magic, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and of course, the Duval Dive podcast, which I did before being here earlier tonight, 7:30 p.m. Like and subscribe to the Duval Dive YouTube channel. Of course, the Black and Gold Banneret, the Night Shift podcast. Go to the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. You'll find that. We got 1,000 subscribers there. So please, the more you help me there, I actually help my unemployed self get a little bit of scratch. So that's a good thing. So for Mikey the Burn Bernier, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed. Hold on, the sound's too low. Let's try that again. There we go. All right.